is an investor in Quibi. And they're an investor in Quibi, I think, for a couple of reasons. First of all, if we are successful, we will have brought on what is, as I said, this third generation of film narrative. And if you look at the history of this, which is the companies, the people, the storytellers, the creators who led the movie industry were the ones that when television came along actually came into that business, understood storytelling and adapted to it, and became, the same companies dominated the TV industry. The exact same thing is going to happen here. Those people who are the most skilled and most talented, most entrepreneurial in the television industry today are going to be the ones that are going to make Quibi a success. So the studios, I think, understand that the, big opportunity here is if we're right, this becomes a growth initiative for the entire industry. Not only do we have to make a quality of content that no one's ever made in this space before, but we also have to have a quantity. There is no library. You can't take an episode of Game of Thrones and cut it up into 6, 10-minute pieces. It's crap. It will not work. So every single piece for us needs to be authored, and the only way we can get to the volume of content is if every studio, every producer, across the globe, as we've been talking to you and some people in this room, is if everybody gets on board, we all get into one boat, all start rowing in the same direction, this thing actually has a success. Right now, we will make in the first year about 125 pieces of original content a week, about 25, 26 pieces a day. So that's 7,000 pieces in year one, which is obviously a spectacular volume in addition to attaining a quality that nobody has ever done before. So now let me go to that third part here, and I will give you another place where I always like to go back to other places in history where there are analogous things that occur. So right now today, in the world of short form content, there has been one company, 12, 14 years ago, YouTube was created. And it was this amazing, egalitarian, democratized platform that literally was driven by all of us who wanted to share literally our home movies and our cat videos. And out of that, Google comes along, invests billions of dollars into it, and builds it into the most widely distributed media platform in history by a factor of 200-300. There's 2 billion monthly active users on that, and they're watching 2 billion hours of content a day. It's kind of extraordinary. They put monetization onto that platform, and that allows for entrepreneurs, creators, influencers to create a particular type of content, which I have to say I'm a big fan of. Clearly it's interesting and people are watching it because the amount of content. In 2012, they watched 6 minutes a day. In 2017, they watched 38 minutes a day. Last year, it was 60 minutes a day. We're halfway through this year, it's over 70 minutes a day. So people are watching more and more of this content. It's not because they don't like it, but because it has what they call programmatic advertising, which is very low CPM advertising, we can't afford to spend more than a couple of $1,000s a minute. Well, given that limitation, I think the things that people have done are actually pretty spectacular. It's not like what we do in the traditional network cable streaming business where we spend $100,000 a minute. And I don't care how clever you are, with $3,000 a minute, you're not going to make the same type of content. So now let me go to the analogy here.
Okay.
You may get to say a word or two more today. We'll see. So, in the late 80s and the early 90s, when broadcast TV was at its pinnacle, so you had shows like Seinfeld, Friends, ER, this company called HBO comes along and it says, it's not TV, it's HBO. That was not a pejorative statement. It just said, we're different. So how were they different? Well, they eliminated commercials. They actually changed the form and format, so they were not beholden to 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 13 episodes, 26 episodes. They were not restricted by standards and practices. So sex, language, violence, nudity, Sex and the City, Sopranos, Wires, those shows actually couldn't be on broadcast TV. And then they came to my partner, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and they ordered 10 episodes of Band of Brothers 20 years ago for $125 million. You translate that today, it's like $30 million an episode. So I would say to you, it's not YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, it's Quibi. And if you can see it on those platforms today, not that there's anything wrong with it, you actually can't see it on Quibi. We must offer people a premium experience, the best talent, the new types of storytelling, just a whole different set of standards, and that's what we're setting out to do.
And what is the per minute? It's not 3,000, it's not 100,000. Where does Quibi land?
Well, we do. The top of the things, if you take our lighthouses, which are, we're making 34 of them, so we'll have 8 of them. So we launch April 6th of next year. There'll be a free trial period, a couple of weeks, like a 2-week free trial. We will have in that 8 of these very super premium movies. We can talk more about those. And then we will have one of those every other Monday for 26 weeks, right? So those are sort of what we call the sort of top of the premium, top of the pyramid for us. There are our lighthouses. It's what House of Cards, was for Netflix, or what Handmaid's Tales is for Hulu. These are things that create brand. They are brand definers.
Every second Monday for the first 26 weeks.
For the first year.
For the first
year. So we're making 8 of them in the free trial, and then one every other week after that. There's then a great assortment of alternative programming, which is basically non-scripted, and there are all kinds of very high, very premium, and very fun ideas that we're doing there. And then finally, there's this thing called Daily Essentials, which is how to take information and make information premium, curated, and convenient today. The analogy I would use there is that 6 or 7 years ago, all music was free, and all music was available. You could type any title into a device, and you could pull up 35 million titles. And yet, here we are, 7 years later, and there are 200 million people paying $10 a month. It's literally the same music. It was not music that was inaccessible or that was held off the market. It's not higher fidelity, and it's literally the same music. And why do we pay $10 a month? Because now it's actually curated for us. There's a playlist, there's recommendations. And the convenience around that is what we in fact are paying for. Well, information today is in the exact same place that music was 7 years ago. You can get any piece of information you want, just type it into a device. But what it does not do is it does not curate it, does not produce it, it doesn't turn around and give it to you in a quality way, a convenient way, to be watched on a mobile device on the go during your day.
Fascinating. Goldman Sachs, by the way, on Thursday said that 200 million is now projected to be $1 billion. So the future's pretty bright there. What about, Jeffrey, format? You can read your phone out of which way. And I know there's a couple of formats you're presenting in. I think the room would be interested.
Yeah.
Given the size.
Yes. So, and then I need to go back and give you the economic model, because that's probably the most relevant to people in the room today. But I think that we've done, this is really where Meg has done an amazing job. She put together an engineering team and gave them a challenge that nobody has actually done today, which is, do you watch content like this, or do you watch content like that? Now, when Steve Jobs designed this device, he designed it to be held this way. It fits beautifully in your hand. And if you go back to when he designed this, it actually wasn't even for video. Video was not part of the original iPhones. It's something that came along a couple of years later, and it's actually only in the last 5 or 6 years that you can stream, without, latency, without, loading issues and stuff, where you can actually stream quality video on this device. And so what we wanted to do is to create a way to watch content on here that is actually a great viewing experience, whether you're watching it, holding it in portrait or in landscape. Storytellers will will tell you in a second. I mean, this is where, half of Evan Spiegel was brilliant and half of Evan was whatever the opposite of that is. So the half that he got right is we hold our device this way. The half he got wrong is that we are not cyclops and our eyes are not stacked this way. Our eyes, we actually see the world in landscape. And so any filmmaker will tell you the reason why our TV sets have actually, if you remember, they used to be a square box and they have gotten wider and wider. And because the wider the vision is, the more immersive it is into storytelling. So Meg and the design team here, the product team, have actually created a new player and a new set of algorithms around compression. And unfortunately, words will not do justice to it, but I tell you, anybody that sees this, sees demos of what happens here when you play content in this, it's actually quite breathtaking. So now, that only works if we get our creators, our storytellers, to actually take advantage of it. And that's been the fun part of this, is by having Silicon Valley and Hollywood together, it is in fact, they've designed a device that will allow you to play content in a new way, but then you have to make the content that can work on the new player that they built. And that's the challenge we then went to filmmakers with, and I have to say, every one of them have come back with super interesting and really creative and new innovative ways to tell stories. So for me, I'm counting on next April that we're going to do two things, which is deliver you content unlike anything you've seen before, but also then give it to you on your device in a way in which you go, wow, that really is better.
Before we go to the economic model for the room, who's in? Which directors have signed up? Which directors do you anticipate? I know you've been speaking with some high-profile actors about doing the show.
Well, we're in production. We're making shows. I mean, so Anton Fuqua has been doing a show, producing a show for us down in New Orleans with Stefan James and Lawrence Fishburne, and Anna Kendrick finished shooting a show last week. Catherine Hardwick started shooting a show a couple days ago. Doug Lyman's doing something for us. Guillermo del Toro is doing something for us. I mean, I don't want to go at Steven Spielberg. So Steven Spielberg came in and said, I have a super scary story I want to do, but I only want people, and he's writing it himself. So he's actually written 5 or 6 chapters of what I think will be about a 10 or 12 chapter story. And which is exciting for me because he hasn't actually sat down, and he's as good a director or producer. He's also an incredible writer, but it's hard to find that time. And so getting him to actually write something has been fantastic. So, but he's written now, as I say, 4 or 5 of them. But he said to me, I only want people to be able to watch it at midnight.